everyone. Welcome to Odyssey Bookstore. We're very excited to have you here tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. We can't wait. We think we'll really enjoy our conversation tonight with Susan and Barbara. A few housekeeping details to begin with. As usual with Zoom, please keep yourself on mute. And if you have any questions during the event, just add them to the chat. Susan is going to be pulling them in occasionally to intersperse with her own questions. I'd like to first begin by introducing Susan Curie. Serving as a librarian for over 30 years, Susan recently has been the interim librarian at Tompkins County Public Library, where she served as the head librarian from 2009 to 2017. Susan has been using her time after retiring from the library to write a memoir of her own. And we're very much looking forward to the day when we can host you here again, Susan, for your own book talk. Without further ado, I give you Susan Curie and Barbara Page.
All right. Good evening. Well, I'm very honored and I'm delighted to be able to introduce to you artist and writer Barbara Page tonight. This is for Spring Writes program, The Art of Reading. Now, I first met Barbara when she was a member of the Board of Trustees for the Tompkins County Public Library. And she helped us to create a new strategic plan for the library. And she helped us create a library art policy, which we needed, and many other noteworthy contributions. Barbara's a woman of many accomplishments. She's an artist, a writer, a mother, and a pilot. As an artist, her work is well known and beloved, including her work, Rock of Ages, Sands of Time at the Museum of Earth. Her new book, Bookmarks, published by Bauer and Dean Publishers with over 800 illustrated cards, is a gorgeous visual journey through a lifetime of reading and remembering. She is an artist whose work has been displayed widely, including the Center for Book Arts in New York City, as well as in many libraries, museums, but also including our own Tompkins County Public Library, where her exhibit of bookmarks was part of a special exhibit celebrating the 150th anniversary of the founding of our public library by Ezra Cornell. Her art inspired the library to create a community card catalog of art with cards created by library lovers of all ages, which is now part of our permanent collection in our local history room. Her art has inspired so many of us, and it's a great pleasure to turn the program over to her tonight. Thank you. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you, Susan. It's so nice of you to be here when you've just come from the library from a meeting that lasted till 6:30 and putting in time to practice for this so we don't have too many technical glitches.
Oh, it was fun.
And just one of my wonderful librarian friends. And also, I just want to give a big thank you to Laura Larson, the owner of this wonderful bookstore, Odyssey Bookstore, which is just a lovely place to be. And we're both here tonight in the library. It's like, oh my gosh, last May, I was in solitary confinement, and here we are. And then I want to thank all of you who are here taking the time tonight to join us to talk about bookmarks. So
let me just share the screen.
Yes. So I'm going to retreat into a slide presentation. It's sort of like a relief because then I don't have to look at my face. Oh my goodness. And so this is the comfort zone of visual artists. And I'm going to explain with pictures as well as 1,000 words how I came to write a book. Okay, the first technical glitch is like, how hard do I have to hit that key to make it move forward?
There we go. Whoops. Oh. Go back. There we
go. Okay. So I actually have to go back one more. And here we are again. So here's a messy table in my studio with one of my journals, more of a scrapbook in the middle. I've been keeping journals since 1982. Initially, I was uncomfortable with writing anything personal, but over the years, words have mostly displaced the images, as I discovered how much of our past we forget if it is not recorded. So some of you are probably not from the Ithaca area, but I just want to say that I live in the Finger Lakes in central New York, a couple of miles from a park with the highest waterfall east of the Mississippi River. This is the gorge below the falls, and you just walk around the corner and then you see Tauganic Falls. I often walk along the rim trail at the top of the cliffs. I've generally been pretty interested in geology. Many years, actually even before I moved out to Trumansburg, I had a passing interest in geological features of this region, as you can see from this life-size map of a stream bed I had painted some years before. And these are basically life-size maps, and the key word here is map. I think of paintings as maps, and sometimes I think of that Borges story where these cartographers are making a map that's so detailed that it's the same size as the actual things that they're mapping, which turns out to be not very useful. So that was a little bit of a digression, sorry. Many years ago, as I was walking along the cliffs, I wondered how long ago the strata visible on the cliff face were deposited and if there were fossils embedded within. Those cliff faces reminded me of the journals I had stacked in my studio. The journals were my means of mapping the passage of time, but all that information inside is not visible until you crack them open. Combining my interest in mapping space and capturing time, I created a book called Depositions. The covers are granite that I had cut and polished, except for the top surface, and are better described as bookends for the photographs, drawings of geological features, pieces of sandpaper, and painted materials that are lodged between them. Needless to say, the content of this book is not really accessible. It stands as a sculpture with only the edges visible. So I gave myself a problem. How could I use geology as a spatial map to mark the passage of a very long time, an eon to be precise? It is very hard to conceive of how long it has taken for mankind to evolve from so humble a beginning, not to mention the effect of extinctions. Fortunately, we have the fossil record to give clues to the past, otherwise we'd be stuck with Adam and Eve. The next, using the fossil record to determine the, Using the fossil record to determine the age of the rock, I decided to make a painting for every million years since the appearance of visible life 543 million years ago. 543 paintings. Images of fossils at true scale, arranged in chronological order of their existence. This project was a folly, but it was brought to fruition thanks to Warren Ullman, the director of the Paleontological Research Institution in Ithaca. He told me of his plans to build a museum to house a large collection of fossils and invited me to create a permanent installation recording the history of life. Mother Earth meets Father Time. I thought he was kidding, but submitted a proposal. The architects were then challenged with designing a space for its display. Visitors to the Museum of the Earth enter the lobby and head down 2 long ramps with my work, called Rock of Ages, Sands of Time, placed in ranks according to geological period, with the oldest specimens clustered at the bottom of the west wall, which is what you see here. If you go around the corner, then you see another rank of fossils, which are from 245 million years ago to the present. So you're just seeing the half of what, the history of life here. A book also called Rock of Ages, Sands of Time, with plates of the entire project and commentary by Warren Ullman, was published by the University of Chicago Press in 2001. Shortly after that, I took a weekend course in converting published books into one-of-a-kind art objects. I took my own book and I cut through all the plates in successively small rectangles until I reached the acknowledgement page at the end, where it says Deepest Gratitude, and I renamed the book Quarry. I have scruples about defacing books, but here's another, Engineers of Dreams by Henry Petoskey. I gave it the form of a bridge because the theme of the book is the design and construction of bridges. Just an example of my love affair with books. Well, kind of a tortuous relationship here. Besides digging up the past for telling evidence of who we are, I sometimes find inspiration in discarded or obsolete items. The skyscapes in this book in a box are painted on the backs of shingles left over from the construction of my studio. No page numbers. The length of the so-called page determines its order. And just because it's birding season, here is a set of bird cages made from discarded boxes and colored pencils. And here is a fictional map using sewing patterns to allude to the flyways followed by migrating birds. So one day in 2008, I opened a book in the public library and found a checkout card in the pocket pasted inside the cover. Before library systems were computerized, we filled out our names on these cards and handed them to the librarian to stamp on the due date and file them to keep track of the borrower and the loan period. This is what you see when you open the cover of my book. You can write your name under the borrower's name. I asked permission to collect the cards now obsolete, thinking that if I added a visual element, it would be a good way to remember the books I read. It was really lucky I was on the board of the county library and the Trumansburg Library, so I did get permission. These are some of the examples of the earliest cards I collected and illustrated. Postage stamps are particularly helpful for highlighting geographical and historical references, particularly for a book like The Art of Travel, which talks about the travels of Balzac in Egypt, for example. I raid my childhood stamp collection, which has finally come in handy. One of the first cards I found at the library was Kafka on the Shore by Murakami. I rarely use quotes on the cards, but this one seemed particularly apt for this undertaking, as it says, "But inside our heads, there's a little room where we store those memories. You'll live forever in your own private library." Some of the cards are odd. One of my librarian friends explained that a state stamping machine cut notches out of the Picasso card to align the successive printing of the due dates. I've actually never seen one of these machines in person, so to speak. So the cards began to accumulate. I needed a place to store them and decided to look for a small card catalog. Since computers put library card catalogs out of business, they appear from time to time in antique stores. At the very first place I stopped, a couple of blocks from my house, I found a 2-drawer model made by a company called the Library Bureau. I was actually on my bike, so I had to go home and get some money to pay for it. Perfect time to get serious about these cards. Fate was speaking. That did not mean I worked on this project every week or month. Deadlines for projects and the stresses of personal life came first. Plus, I have to read the books. Eventually, I decided to recreate my reading history beginning with childhood. Of course, many checkout cards in the library books had been discarded over the years, and bookstores supplied many of the books in my own library. I bought 1,000 pristine cards from a library supply store and took it from there. I illustrated the cards and stamped on the publication date. The completed cards are filed by the year that I read them as best as I could recall. So these are some of the books I read around 1998, 99, while I was working on the Rock of Ages project. Just want to say, John McPhee is one of my favorite writers. So now all the cards are sitting in a box and only the top edges are visible, just like that cliff face. It is only possible to see their pictograms if you are riffling through the box or some are on display in an exhibit. Note that the cards are filed chronologically according to my reading history. It was not a great leap to consider creating a book about books. It was a leap to write it. And I was very lucky to find a publisher willing to take on a project that could not be eagerly categorized. So here's a shout out to my editor, Beth Doherty, who shaped my prose, and Kathy Hart, for the book designer who put all the moving parts in place. The result is bookmarks and artist catalog. And I just want to read a couple of excerpts from the book, from the prologue of the book, which is really, more technical about how the book works and so forth than the actual chapters about my life. But basically, I wanted to invite the reader into this story and think about their own stories. So imagine a library holding all the books you have ever read, books that helped shape who you are today. Imagine the catalog for that library. It exists in your mind, much as the catalogs for many public libraries around the world now float in cyberspace. As an avid reader and visual artist, I wanted to give the library in my mind a physical dimension and make it vibrant with colorful imagery. The result is bookmarks, an ongoing art project consisting of hundreds of 3x5-inch cards illustrated with my impressions of memorable books I have read over 7 decades. And at the end of the prologue, these illustrated bookmarks are not simply part of an art project or a visual survey of my reading history. To me, they are artifacts, tokens, and souvenirs of my lifetime, beginning with the 3 Little Pigs and moving beyond the 6th extinction. To you, these artworks may be small puzzles, providing an incentive to read or reread books in order to decipher my pictorial references. Perhaps they will also evoke memories of your favorite books and elicit your own personal stories to share with others. Here is an example of a spread from bookmarks. The cards usually reflect my memory of particular incidents in a book. A few are crushed or burned. You will, taking that card I showed you that had this, its edges cut up. So here we have up in the left-hand corner a book in Italian. So I do read Italian. I've been in an Italian group for about 30 years and I still can't speak Italian, but and a few, and then you will notice down on the left-hand corner at the bottom, this is a card from Aunt Sally's Lament, and it is cut and folded. So those black spaces are actually, they're not black on the card, they're cut. Mm-hmm. And this is to highlight the structure of the actual book, the story of a quilter looking back on her bittersweet life. So this is what the book looks like. So I wanted to give a sense of its structure. I post new cards on Instagram, sometimes recalling books from the past or those that relate to current events. I wonder if they are useful to book groups considering their choice of reading material. As a grand finale, I want to thank all the authors who have made this book possible. We have been given one lifetime, but their books give us the option of living 1,000. Okay, questions?
See, we'll stop share and then we'll have you. I just have to say that I'll never forget the first time I went to the Museum of the Earth and took the walk to look at the sculptures and the prints. It was astounding, and if you haven't had a chance to do that, I really encourage you. And when I picked up Bookmarks, I gasped because it's one of the most beautiful books. And it's spend hours looking at the cards and looking at how you interpreted the story. And I'm a huge Jane Austen fan, so of course I went immediately to find the Pride and Prejudice. That was great. So I'm going to start with some questions, but if people do have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and we will look at them. All right. Well, first, it's often been said that you can tell a lot about a person by browsing through his or her library. What's your opinion about this?
Well, this book is an opportunity to test that hypothesis because it's a book that has two stories. The first one is told with the library cards, the illustrated library cards that recapitulate my reading history, and then you have the text, which is a collage of memories that they're divided into 6 chapters, which more or less are a decade or a little more in length. And so you have the opportunity. So the cards precede each chapter that they're relevant to that particular period. And so you have the opportunity to look at the cards first and then read the text, which should augment and amplify the significance of the cards. So for example, one of the earliest cards is Make Way for Ducklings. And, most of us had that read to us, or we read it over and over again when we were little. And the reason that card has so much significance for me, they're, Mr. and Mrs. Mallard and their 8 ducklings, mack, pack, lack, whack, quack, 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 is because I grew up with a mallard. My uncle found an egg, and the egg hatched. It was a duckling, and it imprinted on him, and it followed him around for the next 14 years.
Wow.
So there was always honey bun in my life. And that card, you don't know that from looking at the card, but, the text I don't cover every card by any means.
I should have asked, does the mallard on the card look like honey bun?
No. I actually used a rubber stamp because I can't compete with the illustrations.
That's great, though. Well, why did you choose to illustrate the cards rather than write out, a quote from the book?
Well, I'm a visual artist, and when I read books, it's actually like going to the movies. And when I dream, it's like going to the movies. So, the architectural details are all there. People don't talk very much, but visually there's a lot happening. Yes. And I think it was just natural for me to try to think of what how visually I could, express some of my memories of the books. Besides, it's a real challenge to fit in imagery into 3 inches by 3.5 inches on a card. Yeah. So
I see we have a question here. Let's just see what that is. can you read a short section from one of the memoir parts of the book that relates to a special book for you? Oh, it's very nice. It's incredibly creative and wonderfully executed project. That's great. So I'm going to
Wow.
keep asking questions, and maybe we'll come back to that. We'll
Yeah,
give
because
Barbara
I
a
have
little
to
bit of
think about.
yeah. Well, give her a minute to think about that. So, well, let me just ask you a question on the card making process.
Okay.
So, how long have you been making cards? I heard you say
About 12 years.
12 years.
Mhm.
And has the style changed over the years?
Yeah. So in the beginning, I used a lot of rubber stamps. One of my friends gave me an entire type drawer full of rubber stamps.
Oh, wow.
And I used them. I used some of the images over and over again, like the pig that's in like 3 cards, until my editor said, you can't use any more pig cards anymore, any more cards with pigs on them anymore. And then about the year 2000, we had digital imaging. So I started using some of the digital imaging, even going back to some of the early cards. For example, on the card for the yearling, there's a digital image on there, which is of a palmetto, and it's actually from a watercolor that I did, but I can't use wet media on the cards. So I have to digitally print anything that I paint onto the cards. But you'll see that the cards get more and more elaborate, because when I read now, I pretty much do the cards, in a fairly shortly afterwards, and I can remember the book so much better than the ones I had to go back and think, well, what did I remember from that?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember the mother would only let the daughter use 4 pieces of toilet paper. It's just like, that's all I remembered from the cat's eye, so.
And okay, here's a, let's see, we had a couple of questions here. Let me just go back up and find this. Let's see. Has it changed how you read, I think was the question. Let me just see if I can get back to that question. Let's see. Sorry, I'm a little bit.
I could read while you're looking at questions, if that's possible. I'll just read the very first paragraph of the book.
Okay, that'd be great.
It's called Farm and Fable. When do childhood memories begin? I know it's well before we learn to read. Shapes and colors of beloved items are still vivid in my mind's eye. Animal crackers, a cardboard kaleidoscope, and the black leather nose of the stuffed koala bear my father brought back from Australia. My father was overseas in a submarine during World War II. My favorite possession was an assortment of crayons I kept in a cookie tin. Every hue was so bright, pink, yellow, and indelibly blue. I remember once coloring in the black and white illustrations in my copy of the children's classic, The Story of Ferdinand, for which I was scolded. At the time, my tin held about 30 Crayola colors. It would be several years before the box with 64 hues hit the market. By the time my grandchildren arrived, Crayola was manufacturing 120 standard colors. As we age, we similarly drift toward ever more complexity as we continually sort ourselves into more specific tints and shades.
Oh, that's wonderful. Did this art project change how you read and how you approach books?
Yes, it definitely made me think about the time I was investing into a book. So I've really tried to read pretty good literature. I mean, every once in a while I fall off the wagon, but
all reading is good.
All reading is good.
All reading is good.
Yeah. So it's always disappointing when I read a book and I can't think of how to illustrate it.
Oh,
yeah.
That's an interesting challenge.
Yeah, I can't do them all.
Yeah.
So sometimes they don't leave me with any particular image, or sometimes they're just too complicated. Like, for example, The Warmth of Other Suns, which is
Oh,
about the
yes.
Great Migration, and it follows 3 characters through decades. And I've thought of doing the card as a triptych, so you follow each one,
Yeah.
but I haven't solved that yet.
That's
I will, but
interesting. That would be an interesting
Yeah,
one to
but-
see.
mhm.
So when you wrote the memoir, did you use the cards to inspire the writing, or did you write and then match the cards?
Well, when I wrote the memoir, I didn't have nearly enough books in it. So my editor, she really pulled a lot out of me so that I could use the cards. I mean, I don't make a lot. There's only one book I describe in some detail, at some length. But the books definitely started to drive the manuscript after I got started.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So about half the cards that you have stored in your file are in the book. How did you decide what to include and exclude in the book?
Yeah, we didn't try to include them all because the book would have been way too fat and heavy. And besides, not all the cards are really great. One thing about doing art is if you put the art that's not quite as good as that other one, it makes the good one look a lot better. But so there were various factors. One was how many cards I had for a certain period. So, for example, there was during the 70s, I was really kind of beleaguered. I had a lot of issues, personal issues. I was ill. My marriage was breaking up. I was trying to get a degree, get through graduate school. I had 2 kids to take care of. I just didn't read very much. I read some technical books or, art criticism, but that's not, I don't include those books, or maybe 1 or 2 just to show that that's where I was. But, and then, for example, recently, say the year 2017, I might have read 30 books, and obviously I can't use 30 books from that period. So I have to cut out a lot of the recent ones and use a lot of some of the periods where I wasn't reading very much.
Sounds like maybe there could be a volume 2.
Maybe 50 years from now.
Oh, here's a nice question. You are a visual artist, as you say, but you are so alive to text. This book combines the two in a perfect way. I always loved card catalogs and was sad when they disappeared. This book is a lovely way to honor the tangible quality of books notation in a library. And that leads to a great question. Actually, at the public library, we use the Dewey Decimal System to categorize books and to place them on the shelves. But you have a different system. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, when I first thought about doing a book, I thought maybe I should do it by subject. But I had arranged the cards chronologically because that's how I, kind of figured out where I was and where the books should go. And this is really, Dewey wouldn't approve of me at all because, and it was a great system for organizing the book. But now when I want to find a card, do I remember what year I read the book? No. So I've had to make a list of what year, is outside of it to, be able to find the card. So it didn't turn out to be a perfect system, but it worked for the project.
Well, Dewey has its own mysteries as well. So.
Yes, indeed. You'll read about some of them in the book.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you have mentioned that you are a 10% wannabe scientist, and I certainly see that in the books that you read and some of your art. And you seem to like to organize and categorize information. Could you reflect on the parallels between bookmarks and your work, The Rock of Ages?
Yeah. So they're actually pretty similar in the sense that both are made up of many small parts. And this week, Arthur Whitman was really wonderful and wrote a review of the book in the art section of the Ithaca Times.
It's a wonderful article.
A wonderful review. And he mentioned sequential art and graphic novels and comic books. And I wrote back to him and I said, yeah, I have Understanding Comics, the invisible art, sitting right in front of me on my bookcase, because I hadn't heard the term before. I'd sort of thought of narrative art, but basically taking a lot of small images, putting them together and to make one big story, so that both of those have that sense. And also, I mean, of course, Rock of Ages is an eon, and my book is just one small human lifetime. But they're also divided into periods. So, you know, you have the 12 geological periods, and then the book is divided into 6 chapters that are more or less the decades of my life. Yeah, so I definitely have the love to do research, go to the libraries and hang out there. Yeah.
Oh, and
and of course I was married to a scientist. So, you know, so I'm kind of versed in the culture, so to speak.
Yeah. Here's a great comment, and I quite agree. This would make a great education project for a classroom, and all the books students read over a school year. It'd be a great art program to teach children how to make, you know, take a book that they loved and illustrate it. I think that would be
somebody just wrote me from the professor down in North Carolina and said she was using it for her photography students to show them how you could do, you know, it's not just doing the work in school, that you do it through your whole life to make, and you know, it all adds up in the end.
I think this book could inspire not only reading, but many projects as well. It's great. So, so how did your life experiences influence your reading and reading your life, and how, you know, reading your life experiences as well?
Well, the book does talk quite a bit about that. I think so many people have written about how reading was such a comfort to them when they were growing up. You know, it's like you retreat into another world when your world isn't so great. Or, but also reading has just been a huge schooling for me. It's like, so the main way I got education, I mean, I didn't finish college, and I just love reading over all different subjects, very eclectic, from economics to science, mysteries, you know, I'm just reading sort of all over the place. Yeah.
So this question I had as I was reading the book is that so interesting to see your understanding of technology and tools and science, and how you're able to convey that, and choosing the stamps. You know, it's just really more of a comment than a question, but I find it fascinating how you came to figure out what to pick to choose to create each card. Fascinating.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a challenge. And I do spend, you know, wake up time in the middle of the night thinking about, what am I going to do for that card? And how often I have to wait for the right thing. I'm waiting for this General Pershing stamp, and for a book written by my friend Gay Daly. And I have a pair of tiny sunglasses. They're about an inch. They're got purple frames, and I need the book to use, you know, so I can use that image. You know, it's like a two-way street. So I know a lot of times the images, you know, it goes both ways.
All right, we have to help you find a book for that.
That's right. If anyone knows one, let me know. I'm just dying to use the purple sunglasses.
Yeah, here's another question. What are some of the differences between writing and then making things in your studio?
Oh, well, I've got a demonstration here. Just a second. So, excuse me.
All right. So,
okay. Either I wear my coat of many colors to the studio, or
oh, that's fantastic.
I put on my coat of many letters when I'm going to the typewriter.
That's fabulous.
Just kidding. Okay, so what it's like what's the difference? All right, first of all, both of them require a lot of sitting around, I have to say. I'm usually standing when I'm working in the studio, though. So writing is not an easy process for me. I mean, it's one thing to write in my journal, which is like blah, blah, nothing interesting, but just keeping track of stuff. And then to sit down and actually write a book. I'm a slow writer. I didn't, when I go to the studio, I am totally in charge. Nobody's coming and telling me what to do. I just sit down and I do it. And then the work goes out into the world and people, say, oh, that's interesting or whatever. You don't really get much criticism or feedback, or at least I don't. And then when I started writing this book, I thought, okay, well, here we go. But I didn't realize it was kind of like a democracy. So I had a lot of issues with my editor, which were wonderful because we spent all of the solitary time in the pandemic on the phone discussing whether a comma went here or whatever. I mean, there's 3 commas in this book that I think this is crazy, but the Chicago rule of style says, yes, we use a comma in these situations. So I really learned a lot while I was doing this. And, then the book goes out to readers and they come and say, well, we don't like this part because nobody's interested in the Library of Congress system. So the whole session on the Library of Congress system got removed because there actually are no library cards that I used from the Library of Congress. They were all Dewey Decimal. Anyway,
very funny.
So it was just an interesting interactive process. So they were pretty different, except that you're still a lot of the time. It was a lot of time on the computer.
I think everyone's going to now be looking for the 3 commas.
Okay. And you also have to look for the one, what do you say? A number. What do you say when it's a letter or a numeral? What do you call it?
Part of the classification system.
No, you're a librarian. Anyway, there's one character in the text that is not black. There's one that's red and
exclamation point.
No.
Oh, what is it?
No, well, you'll have to look and see.
Oh, gotta go look for that.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. What does your to read bookshelf look like? Is it one shelf or a whole bookcase?
Oh, it's actually one shelf in my bookcase, but there's an awful lot piled up my bedside table.
Yeah, see, that's the thing is that you might have it to read, but then you got the stacks too. So.
Yeah, the one thing that's great, if you're talking about browsing through somebody's library, at least you can keep the books. You don't want anybody to know you're reading up on your bedside table.
It's a great place to stash them.
Yeah.
I see someone I know who used to live in Ithaca who's now in Seattle. So you have someone from Seattle.
Okay.
Hi, Paul. It says, this is terrific. Are your artist books available directly from you in your studio, or do you work with a dealer? Well, they have them here at Odyssey Bookstore, and if you find it online, I'm sure you could order them.
They're at all the standard places, including what.
Order from Odyssey.
Yeah, but there's also bookshop.org, which supports independent bookstores.
Yes.
So
that's a great source.
It's kind of like but
a percentage of their sales go to independent bookstores.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The artist books that you showed in the slideshow. Got it. Okay.
The artist books. Well, they're all in my studio. Some of them were on display at a show last year. I don't really do very many.
You mean the books that were taken apart?
Yeah,
I think is what.
Yeah. They're just in my studio.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you're beautiful. Well, are any more questions? Does anyone have any more questions? Don't see any more. So, do you have any parting words for us? Do you want to? Can you pick one? Can you tell us?
I think one thing I could talk about is some people, because this is called The Art of Reading, I just wanted to mention that at the last page, I think, of the book, there's a picture of the place where I made the cards, the table, and all the junk that's there. And there's a description of making the cards, which I've touched on a little bit, but a couple of people have asked specifically about that. So there is an opportunity to read about it more in depth. And
That's great.
yeah.
There's a question. Do you have any advice for someone writing their own memoir?
Well, that's interesting, because I definitely would never have written this memoir if I hadn't had the card project, because it's so hard. I mean, I felt like one thing, the difference between art and doing visual art and writing is I felt like it was so revealing. And it was really hard for me to talk about some of the painful parts of my life. And so I felt like when I was talking with my editor, was saying, you have to tell people how you feel about this. I felt like I was in a therapy session. It was challenging. And so I don't think without the backbone of the library cards, I would have ever done something like this. Because first of all, it's really hard to imagine, just this person that, does stuff, but, I'm not Beyonce or one of those people. And so, there's not that many people who would be interested in my life unless I have some kind of, something else to show. And, I was even, there's photographs in the book. And when I first conceived of this book, I definitely did not think there would be photographs in here. And, I'm not the selfie generation. So even when we were starting this talk and I'm seeing myself on the screen, I'm like, ah! So the reason there are photographs is because of the structure, the design of the book. We needed to start all of the pages with images on the left-hand side, but sometimes the text would end on with a blank page. So we had to put an image in, and it ended up being me. So that was hard. I mean, it's just, when you're writing something like this, I don't know, it's very different than making art where I'm kind of hiding behind everything, Yeah.
I think that's really interesting because, that writing would feel more revealing than creating some of the art, and some of the cards themselves have so much emotional impact when you look at them as they describe the book. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Art definitely can have a very strong impact. It was just, I think it was because it was my first experience doing something like this that it felt so, it's hard.
Personal.
Yeah.
Will you continue to make cards, or do you plan to stop at some point?
Well, it's really hard for me to stop doing things. I keep telling myself I'm getting pretty old. Pretty soon I'm not going to be able to do X. And I'm like, my kids are really going to have a tough time when I can't do the things I like to do. But anyway, I am still making cards, and they're on my Instagram page under Page Art Studio. And I'll just probably keep making them because I'm in the habit of it. It's like doing little exercises, like people who play the piano and they practice scales first. Sometimes I'll just go to the studio and do a card first, but I have to read the books, so they don't happen all that often.
Well, I hope that you keep making them because you have a lot of followers on Instagram and they're beautiful cards. So
thank you.
Yes. So, well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. This was wonderful. Very honored to have been able to listen to your presentation and have a chance to talk with you and learn more about your beautiful book.
Well, thank you. One thing that's really hard is I don't see any of you, and I don't even know who's here. But one of the things in some of the Zoom talks I've given, I have been able to see some of the people. Oh my gosh, there's all these
There you
people.
are. I just put it on gallery view so she can see everyone, so people can wave.
Oh, so nice to see you. So this is so hard because I want to see you all. I've so many people I haven't seen for, many years, and some of my family, and it's just wonderful. Thank you so much for coming.
And I see Beth Daugherty, who's
my editor. She made
she's
it.
Here. She's here.
That's great because you just went and got a COVID shot. All right. So,
great.
Well, thank you so much for coming. It was just wish we could have a big party.
It would be nice. It would be lovely to see everyone in person. So enjoy the book and have a wonderful evening, everyone. And thank you so much. And Barbara, thank you for this absolutely gorgeous book. Beautiful works of art in it.
Well, thank you so much for being there for support. Thank you.
Thank you. You both did a wonderful job. You make a great pair. I think maybe there's a radio or TV show in this.
I like that. That would be fun.
You have a very nice report. I want to thank everybody, echo their appreciation. Thank you so much for coming. It was really, truly a pleasure to have both of you, and I'm glad you all could join us this evening here in virtual Odyssey Bookstore, but we do also exist in the real world, so you're welcome to come join us here as well. Thank you so much, Barbara and Susan. That was truly a pleasure. Have a great evening, everybody. Take care.